Welcome to the Hank Cisco Show, ladies and gentlemen. Don't touch that remote. Listen, all you aunts and uncles and mamas and papas and your gummadas and your gumbadis, listen, pay attention now, because it has to do with our youth, the youth of today. You know, we will talk about all the problems, you know, the children are doing this and children are doing that, but let's look at it in the eyes of a district attorney that gets the reports from the police department that makes an investigation. And then it's up to the district attorney, the probation, to come up with what's best for this child, juvenile. And then the judge has to either send him home, send him to an institution, probation, whatever it may be. So it's so important today. And a lot of people really don't know their kids' their problems. There's different programs to help children to stay out of trouble, and there's programs that when you get in trouble, they got programs to straighten you out. So, my guest today is from the district attorney's office, and she is in charge of district attorneys. They have a certain division that district attorneys set up with the different departments. And this department is juvenile, very important in this day and age. So, I'm going to let her introduce herself, tell us something about herself. So tell me what your name is and what's your title.
Good morning. It's very nice to be here. My name is Sharon Jamper-Caro. I'm one of the deputy district attorneys in the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, and I'm also
your district attorney, Lisa Furman.
Risa is my boss, wonderful leader.
Right, yeah, she's my friend. I called, she said she'd send somebody over here that's very important.
And I'm also the chief of the juvenile division. I've been in the DA's office 21 years.
21? Oh, yeah. My God. 21, now you can drink liquor.
That's right.
You're 21.
I started out prosecuting adult offenders in the major crimes.
Well, let me tell you, what schooling, what kind of schooling did you get?
Undergraduate, University of Pennsylvania for nursing. I'm a registered nurse.
Oh, no kidding.
So, yeah, I've done pediatrics and geriatrics, worked at Children's Hospital, and then law school is...
If they get beaten up, you can straighten them up, you can fix them up as a nurse, right?
That's right, they two go well together. And then law school is Villanova Law School.
What law school?
Villanova.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Good law school.
Penn undergrad.
So you didn't have to travel far away, right?
No, I'm a Lower Merion Township resident.
How about your family? You have your...
My family, my husband's name is Frank Flick. I have twin boys.
Name Frank?
Frank Flick.
Good name.
Yeah.
Good. My name's Frank. They call me Hank. They call me Rock. They call me this. You know, I got a million names. So what's he do?
Frank is a criminal defense attorney. He works in Norristown. He's also a part-time public defender.
Oh, yeah? Oh, so he's a public defender, and you put them in and he takes them out.
Right. We don't exactly take the same cases. That would be a bit of a conflict, but...
I had the chief of public defender's department here. She's very good, new lady.
Oh, wonderful lady.
Yes,
Kira Bradford Gray. And I have twin boys. They're 23 years old.
Wow.
My father was a doctor in South Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Salvatore Jamper-Caro. My
still
mother
around?
lives with me. He passed 6 weeks ago.
Oh,
but at the age of 90, so I was very blessed to have him that long.
Yeah. What part of South Philly?
He was around Broad and Mifflin.
Mifflin, oh yeah, that's real South Philly.
Yeah.
Right. Down there.
St. Agnes Hospital.
Yeah, and so, juvenile. The juvenile division. All right, now, let's break it down. That when a juvenile commits a juvenile act, an adult commits a crime. Is that right? So we break it down. There's a difference. Tell us a little bit of a difference between them.
Well, a criminal offense in juvenile law is called a delinquent act. And in the adult world, it's called a crime. But they're both criminal offenses. So the juvenile jurisdiction is any child under the age of 18 that commits what would otherwise be an act in our crimes code would be under the juvenile court jurisdiction if they're convicted. And our exposure, in other words, the juvenile court jurisdiction is until their 21st birthday. So 21st birthday. Okay. As long as the crime or the offense has been committed before they turned 18 years of age.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you do, as a district attorney, prosecutor, you look for what's best, right? And you work along with whoever the attorney is, right? But to look for a fair trial, make sure that he did commit the offense, right?
Well, that is
Right.
my definition of a prosecutorial role anyway, as being a minister of justice. We're always looking for the fairness and the justice in all dispositions. In juvenile court, unlike adult court, they're looking at accountability for the juvenile, the rehabilitation piece. They're also looking at protection for the community and for the victim also in these cases, and ways to make the juvenile lead productive lives, intervention measures.
Right.
So it's a trifold system.
All right, and then you have some programs that work out. Tell me some of the programs you have within the district attorney's office.
Within the district attorney's office, or those programs, the ones in the district attorney's office that are geared toward kids are crime prevention programs. There is a voluminous community outreach by Risa Vetri Furman. And those programs involve youth diversion programs, for instance, a youth aid panel. They involve programs to educate the public and raise awareness on bullying. There are a number of task forces. There's a number of school safety programs going on, and they all interrelate to what goes on in juvenile court. And they're directed to keeping kids safe as a general rule.
All right. Tell me the procedure now. From the time the kid gets picked up by the police, what happens? They have to sign a petition. Isn't like adult. You just lock them up and.
No, it's very different than adult court. One of the major differences in adult court is in juvenile court there are time limitations. When a juvenile is taken into custody, there is only 72 hours before that juvenile would be brought before a judge on a detention hearing. Juvenile court judge to determine probable cause, whether there is probable cause for the offense and whether the juvenile should be detained. And if the juvenile is detained under the Juvenile Act, we have 10 days in which to go to a full-blown trial. So unlike the adult court, even if the offense is...
Adult court, 188 days or so, what was it?
Yeah, depending on whether or not the adult is incarcerated, there's several months, 6 months or longer than that if they're not. But in juvenile court, if they're in the youth center, there are only 10 days regardless of the nature of the offense. So homicide by vehicles, for instance, even though those cases sometimes can be quite complicated, the Commonwealth must proceed to a full-blown trial within that 10-day period. And if the juvenile is convicted and again detained, the Act then provides that we have 20 days to proceed to a full-blown disposition, which is the same thing as a sentencing in adult court.
Whatever it may be.
Exactly.
If he's going to be sent home or he's going to be, what institution?
Well, there's a myriad of possibilities that could happen to juveniles in today's day and age.
Like what?
Well,
I'm going to hit you like a district attorney. I'm going to start asking you questions.
Aside from just a straight probation where there are a number of conditions, there's all sorts of alternative programs because the idea is a placement, you want to choose the least restrictive placement for a juvenile offender. And there are supervision programs that we can send to the juvenile. We can give them counseling. We can give any sort of programs varying in length, whether they're weekend programs, a month program, 90 days, or longer than that. And it could be foster homes or part placements. Some of our programs are so specialized that they're just geared toward sexual offenders, for instance, or they're just geared toward juveniles who have problems with setting fires. They're very specialized. Some are mental health placements that are strictly with psychiatrists on staff and psychologists giving the child key mental health treatment while at the same time dealing with the behavioral aspects of the crime, the underlying offense that was committed.
When a police officer makes a report, and that's a referral, he refers that to juvenile court. He sends that to the district, he sends that to the probation, right?
That's correct, if he's not taking them into custody.
Does they dispose of that at the probation level without going into court?
Yes, they can, and that is done with the district attorney, my written
approval.
approval. I go every week and sign off on their files.
But if you see something that should go that way...
Correct. Then that case would get referred to court. At the intake level, which is the juvenile probation department, when an officer arrests a juvenile, if they're not taken into custody, he would send that paperwork into the juvenile probation department. And at that point, when they receive it, they'll hold an intake hearing. and bring the juvenile and his or her
An intake.
guardian.
All right, tell me that about the intake now. I'm trying to educate people to know, in case your niece or nephew or son or daughter gets in some kind of problem, you say, oh, don't panic, you know, don't go running, spend a lot of money for a lawyer. Check first, see what the situation is, right?
Correct.
Right, and the district attorney is actually helping you, is helping the child, okay? Then if it's a serious case, then you have to get a lawyer, naturally, okay? So tell me what the story there, and then you have a public defender comes in, right?
Right.
But
well,
you have to qualify.
Well, with respect to the intake
Like
process.
Donald Trump's kid get in trouble, he can't get a public defender, can he? No.
Well, probably not, but they'll inquire on that. With respect to the intake process, anytime a juvenile is arrested, I always recommend legal representation. That is, but in the intake process, what happens is a juvenile probation officer sits down with the juvenile and his or her guardian or parent and discusses the nature of that incident, looks into their background, talks about where the juvenile's position is on that, and then that probation officer will make a recommendation for the case to either stay at the intake level or get referred to court through a plea day. If it stays at the intake level, there are two options that the probation officer may recommend. They may recommend an informal adjustment, and that is essentially a sort of non-supervisory probation.
But you oversee, the district attorney's office oversees every case that's referred from the police department, right?
I go once a week and I take a look at their recommendations in their files to determine, because we don't want every juvenile coming to court. There are a number of serious cases, and it would just clog up the system.
And sometimes the police can settle it on the police level too, right?
Absolutely.
The
police have the authority to do a reprimand and release, and absolutely the police may do that, and they're exercising their discretion on whether they're even charging, depending on the evidence and the facts in the case. And the other option at the intake level is a consent decree, which actually requires the district attorney's signature in order for a juvenile to be put on a consent decree. And that is the same.
Wait a minute, this consent decree.
Consent decree. And
What's that mean?
It is essentially a 6-month probationary period, the same conditions a juvenile would otherwise have if he or she were placed on probation.
That's almost the same as an adult court. They have, what do they call that?
ARD, is that what you're referring to? Accelerated Rehabilitation?
Don't get no trouble.
It's a little bit different, but the same sort of theory. It's a diversionary tool, so that the juveniles can actually have a consent decree at the intake level or in court. That option is available for them either way. You
know, when I was a juvenile officer in Norristown, I'm going back now. When I first started as juvenile, they had juvenile court. The judge would, in the court, every Thursday, the judge would hear the cases, you know, and the probation officer handled everything. Well, when I became a juvenile officer, they sent me to Penn State, and they found out that juveniles were not allowed to be held in adult jails. And the probation officer at that time, you say, I don't want him up here. Lock him up and bring him up in the morning, because at 4 o'clock he would go home, and he would live there. And we locked horns many times, you know. So things change now, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And the youth center that we have in Montgomery County
I got something in my throat, and I don't know what the story. Go ahead.
The youth center we have in Montgomery County is really remarkable. It's packed with just dedicated workers. I'm on the board of the board of managers for the youth center, and so I'm very familiar with
keep your eye
what goes
on it, right?
there.
Yeah. Well, you got to be careful. The probation officers don't overstep his boundaries without, you know,